Kentucky is a land of rolling hills, dense forests, and quiet country roads. But hidden along these seemingly peaceful stretches are pathways where darkness lingers. Travelers have reported headlights flickering despite clear skies, sudden chills on empty roads, and shadowy figures moving along the roadside, vanishing when approached. Some roads carry the memories of tragedy, accidents, and restless spirits that refuse to move on. Tonight, we will drive along the 20 most haunted roads in Kentucky, where every turn and bend could reveal a ghostly figure, a flickering lantern, or a presence that watches silently from the trees. If you saw a shadow moving in the ditch beside you, would you stop to investigate, or would you speed away before it steps into the road? Kentucky is a land of rolling hills, dense forests, and quiet country roads. But hidden along these seemingly peaceful stretches are pathways where darkness lingers. Travelers have reported headlights flickering despite clear skies, sudden chills on empty roads, and shadowy figures moving along the roadside, vanishing when approached. Some roads carry the memories of tragedy, accidents, and restless spirits that refuse to move on. Tonight, we will drive along the 20 most haunted roads in Kentucky, where every turn and bend could reveal a ghostly figure, a flickering lantern, or a presence that watches silently from the trees. If you saw a shadow moving in the ditch beside you, would you stop to investigate, or would you speed away before it steps into the road? Blue Lick Road winds through dense forests and rolling fields, an old path where asphalt meets overgrown shoulders and shadows stretch long under the moonlight. By day, the road is quiet but familiar, sunlight filtering through the canopy, illuminating leaves, grass, and the gentle curves of the terrain. Birds call from hidden perches, and the wind rustles through trees, carrying the scent of earth and foliage. The wind rustles through trees, carrying the scent of earth and foliage. Yet when darkness falls, the road changes. Shadows deepen along the tree line, mist drifts in from low-lying fields, and the air seems charged with presence, subtle but undeniable. Travelers have reported seeing a woman in white standing near the tree line. Her form is delicate and ghostly, framed by the dim glow of headlights or the faint silver of moonlight. As vehicles approach, she vanishes without a trace, leaving behind only the impression that she had been there, a lingering sense of awareness and stillness. Her presence is fleeting yet powerful, drawing attention to the subtle interaction between environment, light, and perception. Whispers are sometimes heard along the road, soft and chilling, calling the names of those traveling along the asphalt. They emerge from the darkness at the edge of hearing, carried on a breeze or resonating through the trees. The voices are faint but unmistakable, threading through the natural sounds of night such as rustling leaves, distant owls, or the hum of tires against asphalt. These auditory cues heighten attention and foster a sense of connection to the unseen, a presence that feels both distant and immediate. Footsteps echo along the road despite the absence of anyone walking. The sound is irregular, rising and falling, sometimes close enough to feel behind the vehicle or alongside the path, other times fading into the distance. Observers report a subtle resonance in the asphalt and gravel, as though the road itself amplifies presence and memory. Each step, imagined or real, contributes to the tension and immersion, encouraging travelers to engage fully with their surroundings and the unfolding sensory landscape. The tree line plays a significant role in shaping perception. Moonlight filters through leaves and limbs, creating patterns that stretch and shift with every movement of wind. Figures, glimpsed in peripheral vision, can emerge and disappear within these shadows, blending with natural forms and creating uncertainty about what is seen and what is imagined. The environment becomes a dynamic canvas of light, dark, and subtle motion. Fog and mist sometimes settle over the road, softening the edges of trees, asphalt, and fields. These natural elements diffuse light, creating halos around headlights and moonlit areas. Movement, shadows, and reflections take on a fluid quality, merging the real with the perceptual. Travelers report that shapes can appear to move independently, figures seem larger or closer than expected, and every sound becomes amplified and significant. The combination of fog, shadow, and sound transforms a familiar road into a space of uncertainty, attention, and heightened perception. Temperature and air movement contribute to the experience. Cool gusts sweep along the asphalt, brushing against arms and faces, sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence and drawing attention to subtle details in the environment. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence and drawing attention to subtle details in the environment. The tactile elements of the landscape. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence and drawing attention to subtle details in the environment. The tactile elements of the landscape, combined with sound and visual cues. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence and drawing attention to subtle details in the environment. The tactile elements of the landscape, combined with sound and visual cues, create a multi-layered experience. Sometimes coinciding with glimpses of the figure in white or the sound of footsteps. These shifts in sensation are unpredictable, accentuating the sense of presence and drawing attention to subtle details in the environment. The tactile elements of the landscape, combined with sound and visual cues, create a multi-layered experience where the physical and perceptual converge. The road itself seems to extend perception of time. Minutes feel elongated when observing shadows, listening to whispers, or noticing subtle movements along the tree line. Hours may pass unnoticed while immersed in the sensory interplay of light, sound, and presence. Travelers become attuned to every change in wind, illumination, and motion. Moving deliberately and observing carefully. Aware that perception itself is as vital as the road beneath their wheels or feet. Memory of Blue Lick Road lingers long after departure. The figure in white, ghostly footsteps, whispering voices, and shifting shadows remain vivid, carrying with them a sense of mystery and quiet unease. The environment leaves an enduring impression, a space where natural beauty, history, and subtle haunting converge. Observers integrate these experiences into perception of other landscapes, sensing presence, memory, and subtle energy in ways informed by the road. Sensing presence, memory, and subtle energy in ways informed by the road. The environment leaves an enduring impression, a space where natural beauty, history, and subtle haunting converge. Observers integrate these experiences into perception of other landscapes, sensing presence, memory, and subtle energy in ways informed by the road. Sensing presence, memory, and subtle energy in ways informed by the road. The figure in white, ghostly footsteps, whispering voices, and shifting shadows remain vivid, carrying with them a sense of mystery and quiet unease. Observers integrate these experiences into perception of other landscapes, sensing presence, memory, and subtle energy in ways informed by the road. Blue Lick Road endures as both physical path and repository of experience. Its asphalt, tree line, fields, and fog interact with light, shadow, sound, and perception to create a fully immersive environment. Figures, whispers, and unexplained motion converge to shape awareness, reflection, and observation. Travelers encounter a space that is alive with memory, energy, and subtle presence, leaving a lasting impression of mystery, attention, and the quiet persistence of the unseen along this old and enigmatic road. Leaving a lasting impression of mystery, attention, and the quiet persistence of the unseen along this old and enigmatic road. Pope Lick Road stretches through a dense forest just outside Louisville, Kentucky, its winding curves and railroad tracks hidden beneath the canopy of ancient trees. By day, the area appears serene, with sunlight filtering through the leaves and birdsong echoing softly across the undergrowth. Yet as evening falls, the atmosphere shifts. Shadows lengthen along the tracks, the wind carries an eerie stillness, and the road seems to hum with the weight of stories passed down for generations. Figures have been seen crossing the tracks at night, moving with an unnatural grace. They appear suddenly, half shrouded in shadow, and vanish without a trace when approached. Observers describe them as human in form yet somehow distorted, their movements deliberate, almost predatory. The brief glimpses are enough to unsettle even the most skeptical visitor, leaving a lingering awareness that the forest and tracks themselves are alive with memory and hidden observation. Eerie growls echo from the tree lean, low and guttural, carrying across the tracks and through the surrounding woods. Sometimes they are accompanied by distant cries, sharp and fleeting, fading before the source can be identified. Visitors report a sudden tightening in the chest or a prickling along the skin when these sounds occur, as though the road itself resonates with tension. Every rustle of leaves, snap of a branch, or shift in the undergrowth is amplified, creating an environment where every sensation is heightened. The bridge along Pope Lick Road seems to hold particular weight. Its steel beams and wooden planks rise over the tracks and water below, casting long shadows across the ground. Figures are sometimes glimpsed standing on the bridge, silhouettes against the night sky, observing the path below. When approached, these forms vanish, leaving behind only the echo of movement or the sense of a lingering presence. Some visitors report an oppressive sensation while crossing, as if the bridge itself conceals a malevolent force, aware of every step taken along its length. The forest surrounding the road adds to the atmosphere of unease. Trees tower overhead, their limbs twisting in ways that obscure vision and create shifting patterns of light and shadow. The underbrush rustles unpredictably, and distant sounds of animals are easily mistaken for movement of unseen entities. Shadows appear at the edge of sight, then vanish as the observer turns. Every turn of the path, every step along the tracks, is laden with anticipation, as though the environment itself is guiding attention toward spaces just beyond perception. Visitors often report heightened awareness of sound and movement. Footsteps on gravel, branches bending under invisible weight. And the faint hum of wind through the treetops. Echoes of distant trains or metallic creaks of the bridge. Blending seamlessly with subtle noises, producing a sensation that the road and tracks carry memory and energy from the past. Even minor shifts in light or shadow become amplified, drawing the observer into a full engagement with the landscape. The legend of the Pope Lick monster contributes to the perception of the area. Stories passed down for decades speak of a half-human, half-goat creature that lures travelers onto the tracks. And the narrative of danger persists in the atmosphere. Whether interpreted as folklore or an expression of the land's energy, the legend heightens awareness, making every figure, sound, or shadow along the road feel charged with meaning. The combination of history, folklore, and natural environment creates an immersive tension that lingers long after leaving the site. The legend of the Pope Lick monster contributes to the perception of the area. Even the air along Pope Lick Road carries sensation. Cool drafts drift unexpectedly through gaps in the trees, brushing against skin and clothing. Moisture clings to leaves and branches, intensifying scents and tactile impressions. The interplay of temperature, scent, and movement heightens perception, drawing attention to subtle cues that might otherwise go unnoticed. Visitors often describe feeling as though they are not alone, as though unseen observers move in tandem with them through the shadows of the forest and along the tracks. Extended exposure intensifies the experience. Shadows seem to shift in rhythm with footsteps. Echoes of growls and cries persist across the tree line. Figures appear more frequently along the tracks and bridge. Every turn of the road, every approach to the bridge, every glance toward the forest's edge feels significant. The land itself becomes immersive, responsive, and alive, amplifying ordinary sensations into awareness of presence, history, and unseen observation. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions. The fleeting figures on the tracks, the growls from the woods, the oppressive weight of the bridge. And the shifting shadows linger in memory. Observers describe recalling the silhouettes, sounds, and sensations in dreams or sudden recollections, reinforcing the sense that Pope Lick Road is more than a physical location. It is a space where folklore, memory, and environment converge, producing an awareness that persists beyond time and distance. Pope Lick Road endures as a site of mystery and presence. Its tracks, bridge, and surrounding forest carry echoes of legend. Figures, growls, and shadows that continue to inhabit the landscape. To walk its path is to enter a realm where ordinary perception is suspended. Where folklore and environment intersect, and every step, sound, and glance is layered with awareness. The road observes, remembers, and endures, leaving visitors conscious of forces that are unseen yet undeniably present. Along its winding path, Hellier Hollow Road winds through dense forests where towering trees crowd closely on either side. By day, sunlight filters through the canopy, illuminating leaves and casting dappled shadows along the asphalt. Birds call and the wind rustles branches in a gentle rhythm. After sunset, however, the forest takes on a different character. Darkness falls quickly, swallowing the edges of the road, and the air becomes thick with the quiet weight of isolation. The familiar twists and turns of the hollow feel altered, each bend revealing shadows deeper than expected. Figures are sometimes glimpsed moving between trees. Their forms are faint and indistinct, appearing briefly among the trunks before vanishing. Observers describe them as human in shape yet ethereal, gliding silently. Approaching these figures often causes them to dissolve entirely, leaving only the empty forest and the echo of footsteps that do not belong to anyone present. The moments are brief, yet unforgettable, creating a sense that the hollow itself retains memory and presence. Whispers drift through the trees, low and irregular, sometimes rising from thick groves or echoing along the road. They are faint, often indistinguishable at first, yet unmistakable in their persistence. Travelers report hearing fragments of words, names, or phrases repeated over and over. The sound moves unpredictably, shifting with the wind and the curve of the road, reinforcing the feeling of being watched by an unseen presence. Footsteps follow along the road where none should be. They echo across asphalt and underbrush, sometimes synchronizing with the visitor's own pace, other times independent, rising from corners and shadows where no one stands. Faint screams occasionally drift across the hollow. They are distant, carried by the wind along tree-lined corridors and over bends in the road. The impact is immediate. Observers describe a shiver running through them, a heightened awareness of surroundings, and a sense that the hollow preserves echoes of events long past, layering them over the present landscape. Headlights sometimes flicker inexplicably along the road. Travelers note that illumination fluctuates even on functioning vehicles, brightening or dimming without reason. The effect is most pronounced on curves and near dense sections of the forest, where shadows stretch across the asphalt. The flickering enhances the sense of unreality, drawing attention to every movement along the road and every figure glimpsed in peripheral vision. The forest itself amplifies every sensory impression. Trees crowd along both sides, forming pillars that channel sound and create deep pockets of shadow. Low branches brush along vehicles or walkers, rustling leaves and scattering moonlight in unpredictable patterns. Every slope, bend, and hollow contributes to the perception of depth and presence, creating spaces where light, shadow, and sound interact to produce moments of unease and heightened awareness. Creating spaces where light, shadow, and sound interact to produce moments of unease and heightened awareness. Time seems altered along Hellier Hollow Road. Minutes stretch or contract unpredictably. Minutes stretch or contract unpredictably, echoes persist longer than expected. Echoes persist longer than expected, and shadows linger beyond the moment of observation. And shadows linger beyond the moment of observation. Figures appear and vanish. Figures appear and vanish, whispers rise and fall. Whispers rise and fall, and faint screams punctuate the quiet. And faint screams punctuate the quiet, creating a rhythm outside ordinary experience. Creating a rhythm outside ordinary experience. Observers note that awareness is sharpened. Observers note that awareness is sharpened, with each sound, movement, or flicker of light commanding attention beyond ordinary perception. Even brief encounters leave lasting impressions. Figures glimpsed between trees. Whispers drifting along the road. Cold spots. And flickering headlights imprint themselves on memory. Travelers describe the sensation of being observed. A quiet tension that follows them. And a lingering awareness that persists after leaving the hollow. Every bend in the road. Every pause to listen. And every glance into shadowed woods reinforces the immersive and unsettling quality of the experience. Shadows along the edges of the road twist and shift, bending unnaturally with moonlight and headlight reflections. Figures glide silently through the forest, appearing just long enough to be noticed before vanishing. The interplay of light, shadow, and subtle motion creates the perception of life embedded in the trees themselves. Wind, rustling leaves, and the occasional distant sound of wildlife interact with these phenomena, amplifying the impression of an environment that is aware, layered, and persistent. Hellier Hollow Road exists as a place where perception, history, and environment converge. Figures move among trees. Whispers float along the asphalt. Faint screams echo through bends. And headlights flicker without cause. The forest does not pursue or threaten. Yet presence is undeniable. Engaging visitors in a continuous awareness of space, shadow, and sound. Each step along the road, every glance into the darkened forest, and every pause to listen contributes to a layered experience of immersion and memory. At night, Hellier Hollow Road is most alive. Figures glide between trees, shadows twist unnaturally along the edges of the asphalt. Whispers drift unpredictably. Faint screams rise and fade. And headlights flicker without cause. Footsteps echo along curves and bends. Carried by wind and reflected across trunks. The forest breathes with subtle movement, and travelers leave with impressions that endure. A quiet awareness of unseen presence and a lasting sense of the hollow's layered and haunting atmosphere. Cane Run Road stretches through a quiet expanse of countryside, a long and deserted route bordered by thick woods and open fields. By day, sunlight filters through the trees, illuminating the asphalt and casting patterned shadows along the roadside. Yet as night falls, the road transforms. Darkness drapes the landscape, and the atmosphere shifts, carrying with it a subtle sense of presence that becomes palpable with every step. Cold gusts sweep across the deserted stretches, brushing against travelers unexpectedly. The air chills even on nights without wind, moving in a manner that feels deliberate and directed. Observers describe the sensation as if the road itself is aware of their passage, an unseen companion following alongside, tracing footsteps across asphalt and dirt. The gusts heighten awareness of the environment, amplifying sound, shadow, and perception along the route. Figures occasionally appear along the roadside. Some are indistinct silhouettes, while others seem to hold lanterns that cast a soft, flickering light, leaving no trace of the figure or source of illumination. Observers report that these figures do not interact directly, but their presence is unmistakable, creating an enduring sense of observation and attentive awareness. Faint laughter or crying drifts from the woods bordering the road. The sounds are distant and irregular, sometimes echoing in moments of stillness, at other times appearing briefly and disappearing. The combination of sound and shadow produces a heightened sense of presence, making ordinary steps along the road feel layered with history and attention. Shadows move along the tree line, stretching and twisting against the natural flow of wind. Observers describe elongated forms that shift with subtle motion, sometimes forming humanoid shapes and at other times dissolving into darkness. The shadows appear responsive to movement and light, enhancing the impression that the environment itself is alive, observing each traveler with quiet intent. The road and surrounding woods amplify ordinary sounds. Footsteps echo along asphalt. Twigs snap beneath shoes. And the faint rustle of leaves carries unpredictably across the fields. Each sound is reflected, extended, and magnified, blending with whispers, distant laughter, and subtle gusts of cold air. Travelers report an acute awareness of every detail, sensing movement in spaces that appear empty, and a persistent impression that the road retains memory of past footsteps. Lantern light, when seen, interacts with shadows and terrain to produce fleeting forms. Trees and undergrowth cast twisting patterns across the road, and distant figures appear at the edge of illumination. Observers often notice the figures vanish when approached directly, reinforcing the sense that presence exists beyond ordinary perception. The interplay of light, shadow, and movement creates an immersive experience that engages sight, sound, and awareness simultaneously. The deserted stretches of Cane Run Road convey a subtle distortion of time. Moments feel elongated, shadows persist longer than expected, and figures may reappear in positions where they were seen earlier. Sounds repeat with irregular rhythm, from distant laughter to the creak of branches, producing a layered perception of movement and presence. Observers describe the experience as immersive, a blending of environment and memory, where past and present coexist quietly. The surrounding woods contribute significantly to the atmosphere. Branches sway even when the wind is calm, producing soft rustling that echoes unpredictably. Shadows appear to shift along trunks and undergrowth, moving in ways that suggest life without revealing a source. Figures occasionally step between trees, fading into darkness as the observer focuses on them. The effect is subtle yet compelling, blending natural and unexplained movement into an immersive environment. Travelers report persistent sensations of being accompanied. Cold gusts, moving shadows, and faint sounds create the impression that the road is shared with unseen entities. Observers describe a continuous awareness of presence, a quiet attention that stretches along the road and into the bordering woods. Every step feels monitored, every pause filled with subtle observation, enhancing the sense of immersion in both the physical and unseen environment. Even in moments of stillness, Cane Run Road maintains its atmosphere. Distant laughter fades into the wind. Lanterns vanish without trace, and shadows shift along the tree line. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile cues produces a layered experience, drawing attention to the smallest detail, and reinforcing the impression that the environment is alive, with memory and subtle interaction. Memory and subtle interaction. This is the essence of Cane Run Road, where the past and present collide, and the lines between reality and madness blur. This is the essence of Cane Run Road, where the past and present collide, And the lines between reality and madness blur. Tonight. Visitors often leave the road with lasting impressions of atmosphere and awareness. The figures along the roadside. The shifting shadows. The whispers and laughter. And the cold gusts. All combine to create a landscape that is both haunting and immersive. Cane Run Road is not threatening, yet it carries a persistent presence that lingers in memory, a testament to the quiet attention and enduring spirit of the environment. Cane Run Road endures as a place where landscape, perception, and history converge. Deserted stretches, spectral figures, whispering woods, and shifting shadows combine to produce an environment that is immersive, mysterious, and unforgettable. Travelers experience not only the physical path but also the unseen presence that has watched, lingered, and moved along it for generations, leaving an impression that remains long after departure. Black Mountain Road winds steeply through rugged hills and dense forest, its curves narrow and sharp, the asphalt often slick with rain or morning dew. Trees crowd close to the edge, their branches intertwining above the road to form shadowed corridors. By day, travelers navigate cautiously, aware of the drop-offs and blind turns. Yet as night falls, the road takes on a presence that is palpable, a weight of memory and attention that stretches along every curve, every ridge, and every shadowed bend. Figures are sometimes glimpsed along the curves, standing motionless at the edge of the road or walking slowly into shadow. They appear in the peripheral vision first, elongated by darkness, then more distinct as the eye attempts to focus. Approaching them causes them to vanish, leaving only the sense that something watched or passed by. Observers often describe a chill, a sudden awareness that the road itself holds memory of those who traveled it long ago, silently observing all who now pass through. Distant cries or whispers sometimes echo across the ridges and valleys, carried by the wind. Names, fragments of conversation, or faint exclamations can be heard just beyond comprehension, moving unpredictably along the road and through the forest. The sounds create a tension, drawing attention to the surrounding terrain while reinforcing the sense of unseen presence. Travelers often pause, attuned to every sound, every shift of shadow, every subtle movement in the fog or tree line. Fog often rises from the ground in unnatural patterns, pooling in valleys and curling along the road. The fog drifts unpredictably, swirling around trees and across pavement, sometimes forming shapes that suggest movement or figures. Observers report that the fog thickens in certain areas, then disperses without reason, creating a dynamic interplay of light, shadow, and perception. Every step along the road becomes deliberate, every glance measured, as awareness is heightened by the interplay of fog, darkness, and echoes. Curves and switchbacks accentuate the sense of isolation. Shadows bend along guardrails and embankments, elongating or merging with darkness to create forms that appear animate. Figures sometimes glide along these sections, pausing at viewpoints or standing near the roadside before vanishing. Observers report that attention to subtle cues is rewarded, as the environment communicates through shadow, movement, and the interplay of perception and memory. Footsteps echo along stretches of asphalt, soft and deliberate. Sometimes they appear to follow a traveler, other times they precede movement or originate from spaces that are clearly unoccupied. The sounds interact with natural ambient noises, the rustle of leaves, distant animals, and wind moving through branches, producing a layered auditory landscape. Observers describe the echoes as both compelling and disorienting, reinforcing the sense of presence and heightened awareness along the isolated road. The trees and terrain amplify perception. Branches twist above and along the roadside, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. Rocks and embankments catch moonlight or passing headlights in unpredictable ways, forming shapes that appear animate. Every feature of the landscape contributes to the immersive experience, drawing attention to detail and encouraging careful observation of movement, shadow, and sound. Time seems altered on Black Mountain Road. Moments stretch and compress unpredictably as figures appear and vanish, cries drift and fade, and fog swirls in irregular patterns. Travelers describe a heightened perception of space and movement, where ordinary distances and durations feel suspended. Each curve, bend, and clearing becomes a stage for subtle phenomena, engaging sight, sound, and instinct in ways that ordinary roads do not. Where ordinary distances and durations feel suspended. Figures appear and vanish, cries drift and fade, and fog swirls in irregular patterns. Even brief pauses along the road are amplified. Observers notice faint shapes moving among trees, hear whispers or cries that fade with distance, and feel changes in temperature or air pressure that suggest subtle presence. The combination of isolation, terrain, shadow, and sound creates a deeply immersive experience, compelling full awareness and careful attention with every step, every turn, and every glance. Departing Black Mountain Road leaves a lasting impression. Figures disappear into shadow. Cries fade on the wind. And fog dissipates. Yet memory preserves the sense of presence. Travelers carry with them the awareness of shadow, sound, and movement, recognizing that the road maintains a record of attention, observation, and memory. The curves, ridges, trees, and fog remain vivid in recollection. A reminder that the road is alive with the echoes of those who passed before. Ultimately, Black Mountain Road is more than asphalt and forest. It is an environment where memory, perception, and presence converge. Figures along curves, ghostly footsteps, whispers, and swirling fog create a layered, immersive experience. Each journey becomes an exploration of awareness and observation, leaving a vivid impression of a road that continues to watch, remember, and endure, preserving the echoes of travelers long after they have passed through its shadowed bends. Devil's Backbone Road winds through rugged hills and dense woodland, a narrow ribbon of asphalt that twists and turns along steep ridges. By day, sunlight filters through the branches, illuminating the curves and crests of the landscape, revealing the texture of rocks, trees, and undergrowth. Birds call from hidden perches, and the breeze carries the scent of earth and pine. Yet as evening falls, the road transforms. Shadows deepen along the edges, the wind shifts in sudden gusts, and the environment takes on a presence that is both tangible and elusive. Travelers describe a heightened awareness, a sense that the road itself is observing every movement. Figures are occasionally seen at bends in the road. They appear suddenly, standing silently in the glow of headlights or at the periphery of vision. Approaching them often yields nothing, yet the impression of presence lingers, leaving travelers with a lingering sense of unease and fascination. These figures are ethereal, blending with shadows and natural contours of the landscape, yet their form is unmistakably human. Their appearance is brief but memorable, a reminder that the road carries history, memory, and the subtle imprint of those who have traversed it before. Sudden chills often accompany these encounters. A gust of wind or the shift in temperature can brush across the body, chilling the skin despite calm conditions. The sensation is unpredictable and localized, amplifying the perception of presence and heightening attention to the environment. Every curve, rise, and hollow along the road seems to respond to movement, as if the road itself retains memory and energy from those who have walked or driven its length over time. Eerie music is sometimes heard without source, faint and haunting. Notes float along the bends and ridges, soft and indistinct yet carrying a melody that evokes tension, mystery, and melancholy. The sound seems to emanate from the road itself or from the hillsides flanking the asphalt. Travelers report that the music shifts in volume and tone depending on location, enhancing the sense of immersion and the interplay between perception and landscape. The faint harmonies add to the atmosphere, merging natural and psychological cues into a singular experience of presence. Even in stretches of the road devoid of visible figures, travelers report feeling watched. The perception is subtle yet persistent, a sense of attention that presses lightly at the edge of awareness. Trees, ridges, and shadows contribute to the effect, creating spaces where movement and form are suggested without appearing fully. This sensation encourages heightened observation, careful attention to light and shadow, and a mindful engagement with both terrain and perception. The curves and elevation changes along Davila South Backbone Road shape experience and perception. Narrow lanes, sudden bends, and steep drops accentuate shadows and distance. Trees along the edges form natural corridors, framing glimpses of movement, light, and shadow. Each twist reveals new vantage points, new pockets of darkness or illumination, creating a dynamic and immersive environment. The topography amplifies subtle cues, from a rustling branch to a flicker of movement, transforming the ordinary into something extraordinary. Subtle cues become overwhelming, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Light plays a crucial role in shaping perception. Headlights cast elongated shadows along trees, rocks, and the road surface, creating shapes that stretch, twist, and appear to move independently. Moonlight illuminates ridges and hollows, highlighting textures and accentuating depth while softening the edges of shadows. Dappled light through leaves creates patterns that shift with every movement of wind or vehicle, adding to the sense of the environment as alive with motion, presence, and subtle energy. The soundscape is layered and intricate. Rustling leaves, distant wildlife, and a whisper of wind combine with faint footsteps, music, and the creak of asphalt under tires to create an immersive auditory experience. Even silence carries weight, punctuated by occasional natural or unexplained sounds that enhance perception of space and presence. Travelers report that every sound becomes amplified at night, each cue contributing to a continuous awareness of environment and the unseen. Time feels altered along the road, particularly after dark. Minutes expand when observing shadows, listening to faint music, or noticing subtle motion. While hours can pass unnoticed amid curves, ridges, and forested stretches. The rhythm of vehicle movement, wind, and ambient sound merges with perception, creating an immersive experience where past, present, and imagination intersect. Every step, turn, and pause becomes part of a continuous dialogue between observer and landscape. Memory of Devil's Backbone Road lingers long after departure. Figures glimpsed at bends. Cold touches. Haunting music. And the persistent sense of being watched remain vivid in recollection. Observers carry forward impressions of motion, sound, and presence, integrating them into perception of other landscapes and experiences. The road leaves an enduring impression. A place where natural beauty, shadow, sound, and subtle haunting converge, creating a space that is both breathtaking and unsettling. Davila South Backbone Road endures as both physical path and repository of memory. Its asphalt, ridges, trees, and curves interact with light, shadow, sound, and perception to create a fully immersive environment. Figures, whispers, and unexplained motion converge to shape awareness, reflection, and observation. Travelers encounter a road alive with memory, energy, and subtle presence, leaving a lasting impression of tension, beauty, and the quiet persistence of the unseen along its twisting, narrow path. Along its twisting, narrow path. Old Shakertown Road winds through thick forests and overgrown fields, a path once traveled by settlers long departed. The remnants of wooden fences and stone foundations peek through dense vegetation, hinting at lives once lived along this forgotten route. Moss and vines cover the edges of the trail, and the air carries the earthy scent of damp leaves and soil, mingled with the faint tang of decaying wood. Even in daylight, the road seems suspended in time, a corridor where history and memory linger among the trees and shadows. Figures are sometimes glimpsed along the roadside, moving between the trees and shadows. Observers describe the feeling of being watched, a quiet awareness that follows along the road, intensifying the sense that the path itself holds memory and presence. Shapes appear near tree trunks or overgrown foundations, suggesting movement without origin, a subtle reminder that the past is never entirely gone. Whispers drift from the underbrush, soft and intermittent, rising and falling unpredictably. Names or words are carried on the wind, their tone indistinct yet purposeful. Observers often feel a chill accompanying the sounds, a tightening of awareness that heightens perception of shadow, movement, and sound along the trail. Every step on the forest floor seems amplified, each rustle of leaves or snapping of twigs carries significance. Footsteps are reported where no one walks. The sound is measured, deliberate, echoing along the trail and through overgrown fields. Visitors describe moments when their own steps seem mirrored by invisible companions, a subtle rhythm that heightens the sense of observation. Branches sway and leaves rustle without wind, reinforcing the perception that the road and surrounding forest are responsive, watching, and aware. Every movement along the trail is accompanied by layered sensations of presence. Lights occasionally flicker along the roadside, appearing without source. Small glows drift among the trees, sometimes hovering near foundations, other times moving along the trail. Observers describe a subtle pull toward the lights, curiosity tempered with caution, yet when approached, the lights vanish or fade into shadow. Their presence is intermittent but persistent, producing a feeling of layered perception where ordinary senses are amplified and the environment feels alive. The environment feels alive, and the ordinary senses are amplified. The overgrown foundations and ruins add to the sense of mystery. Weathered wood, fallen beams, and stone remnants suggest the outlines of houses, barns, and fences, now reclaimed by nature. Shadows pool in corners and hollows, elongating with shifting light and producing fleeting shapes that appear to move independently of the observer. Figures may appear briefly among the ruins, their presence subtle yet unmistakable, creating a sense that the settlement's memory remains intact, woven into the fabric of the land. The forest itself contributes to the atmosphere. Ancient trees tower along the trail, their limbs intertwining to form dark canopies that filter light and amplify shadows. Wind rustles the leaves in unpredictable patterns, producing sounds that blend with whispers, footsteps, and flickering lights. Observers describe heightened perception in these areas, noticing subtle movements, shifting shadows, and changes in temperature that draw attention to the interplay between environment and presence. Trails that branch from the main road carry echoes of past use. Footpaths overgrown with grass and vines create patterns of light and shadow, amplifying sound and movement. Figures may appear at turns or gaps in vegetation, pausing briefly before vanishing, giving the impression that the road is alive with memory. Even minor actions, like stepping over a fallen branch or brushing against undergrowth, are amplified by the surrounding environment, reinforcing the immersive experience. Extended time along Old Shakertown Road intensifies the sensation of awareness. Shadows seem to stretch with attention. Whispers rise and fade across overgrown fields. And flickering lights appear more frequently near ruins. Visitors describe a subtle pressure. As if unseen presences move alongside or watch from nearby trees. Every step and glance becomes significant. An ordinary perception is heightened by the layered interactions of shadow, sound, and movement. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions. The glimpses of figures in shadow. Whispers from underbrush. Echoes of footsteps. And spectral lights persist in memory. Observers recall shapes, movements. And the interplay of light and darkness. In dreams or sudden recollections. The road leaves a sense of history alive. Of memory present. And of awareness enduring within the overgrown corridor. Old Shakertown Road endures as a space where history, nature, and subtle presence converge. Its trails, ruins, and forest carry echoes of lives long past. while shadows, figures, whispers, and lights continue to inhabit the landscape. To walk its paths is to enter a realm where perception is heightened. Ordinary experience is suspended, and memory is preserved in every shadow, sound, and flicker of light along the road. The land observes, remembers, and persists, leaving every visitor conscious of forces that are unseen yet undeniably present along its overgrown course. Bluegrass Pike stretches through rolling hills and dense woodland, a winding road that curves sharply along cliffs and valleys. By day, it appears serene, the sunlight catching the asphalt and the leaves of nearby trees, the distant hum of traffic blending with the sound of wind. Yet after sunset, the road changes character. Darkness falls quickly, swallowing the edges of the asphalt, and the familiar landscape takes on a weight that is difficult to describe. Travelers report the sensation of being watched, of movement just beyond the reach of headlights. Figures are sometimes seen walking along the curves late at night. Their forms are faint but unmistakable, gliding along the shoulder of the road or stepping between trees near the edges. Observers describe them as human in shape yet ethereal, appearing briefly before vanishing into shadows or the surrounding darkness. Approaching these figures often causes them to disappear entirely, leaving only the road, the trees, and the echo of movement that seems to linger in the air. Cries and footsteps echo unpredictably along the pike. Travelers report hearing voices in anguish, soft murmurs. The rhythmic sound of steps where no one should be. Each sound seems to carry a weight, a memory of lives touched by the Roada's history, creating an immersive and unsettling sense of presence. Faint laughter sometimes drifts across the asphalt. It is brief, almost playful, yet layered with an edge of unease. The sound is difficult to locate, echoing from shadows and tree lines as though moving independently of the environment. Observers describe the laughter as adding texture to the nighttime atmosphere, interwoven with whispers, footsteps, and distant cries, making the road feel alive with memory and subtle activity. Phantom cars are reported following travelers at high speeds. Observers describe headlights appearing behind them, approaching along curves. Yet when glanced at directly, no vehicle is visible. The effect is sudden and alarming, heightening awareness and creating a sense of motion and danger that is inexplicable. The illusion blends seamlessly with the natural contours of the road, the movement of shadows, and the curvature of the asphalt, reinforcing the impression of presence without explanation. The terrain along Bluegrass Pike amplifies every perception. Trees line both sides, their branches forming dense canopies that obscure moonlight and cast deep shadows. Hills rise and fall alongside the road, creating pockets of darkness where movement seems possible and echoes travel further than expected. Every bend, shoulder, and curve becomes part of the stage where light, shadow, and perception interact, allowing figures, sounds, and lights to appear and vanish in a natural yet unnerving way. Light, shadow, and perception interact, allowing figures, sounds, and lights to appear and vanish. Time feels altered along the pike. Moments stretch longer than expected. Footsteps echo beyond their source. Shadows linger along curves and embankments. Figures appear briefly, vanish, and reappear in sequences that defy expectation. Cries, laughter, and phantom headlights blend with the hum of the asphalt and the whisper of wind through the trees, creating an environment where ordinary perception is heightened and every step feels significant. Even short visits leave lasting impressions. Figures walking along curves, distant cries, fleeting laughter, and phantom vehicles imprint themselves on memory. Travelers recount a persistent sense of observation, a subtle tension that follows them along the road, and the feeling that history itself lingers in the asphalt and trees. Each pause to listen, each glance along a bend, and each subtle shift in shadow reinforces the immersive quality of the road at night. The natural features of the area intensify the phenomena. Hills and embankments create shadows and amplify sound. Trees along the roadside block light and form shapes that appear to move with the observer. Curves and declines in the road obscure vision, allowing figures and lights to appear unexpectedly. Every contour of the asphalt, every movement of the wind, and every flicker of shadow contributes to the layered experience, making the environment feel alive with memory and presence. Figures along the curves move deliberately yet remain elusive. Observers note subtle pacing, pauses, and sudden disappearances. Cries, footsteps, and phantom laughter interact with the natural features of the landscape, creating a continuous awareness of presence. Phantom headlights trace curves and shadows, further heightening perception. Every step along the asphalt becomes deliberate, every glance significant, and every sound layered with the suggestion of history embedded in the road itself. Bluegrass Pike exists as a space where history, perception, and environment converge. Figures glide silently along curves, whispers and cries drift through shadows, laughter echoes unpredictably. And phantom headlights illuminate the night briefly before vanishing. The road does not threaten, yet presence is undeniable, engaging visitors in an immersive awareness of space, movement, and memory. Observers leave with impressions that persist, a quiet understanding of the road as both landscape and repository of spectral echoes. At night, Bluegrass Pike is most alive. Figures walk along curves, shadows twist along embankments. Cries echo in valleys. Laughter drifts across asphalt. And phantom vehicles flash headlights briefly. Trees, hills, and the curvature of the road create pockets of movement and observation that amplify every sound and shadow. Travelers depart with enduring impressions, a heightened sense of perception, and the awareness that memory and presence linger along every bend, curve, and shadow of Bluegrass Pike. Red Hill Road winds through dense forests, a long and narrow passage where sunlight filters unevenly through thick canopies of leaves. By day, the road is serene, lined with towering trees and bordered by old stone walls that mark the edges of long-abandoned farms. The landscape carries a sense of history, each curve and rise in the road hinting at the passage of time and the lives that once moved through it. Yet as evening falls and the shadows grow, the road transforms into a place where the ordinary feels altered and the past lingers just beyond perception. Figures occasionally appear near the old stone walls or beside abandoned farmhouses. Their outlines are faint yet human, moving slowly and deliberately along the roadside or between shadows of trees. They do not speak or approach directly, yet their presence is undeniable, leaving a lingering impression that the road is observed and alive with memory. Whispers drift along the road, carrying fragments of old names or lost conversations. The sounds are faint, sometimes melodic, sometimes urgent, weaving through the trees and across stone walls. Visitors report hearing them from empty spaces, with no clear source. The whispers blend with natural sounds of the rustling of leaves, the shift of branches, and the occasional call of nocturnal wildlife, producing an immersive auditory experience that draws attention to every footstep and movement. Cold spots move unpredictably along the road, brushing against travelers as if invisible hands pass nearby. The sensation is sudden, localized, and persistent, traveling across miles of asphalt and dirt. Observers often report heightened awareness, feeling watched or accompanied even when no living being is visible. The chills intensify the impression that the environment itself holds memory and is attentive to every step along the winding path. Stone walls and farm structures amplify perception. Their presence suggests intention. Reinforces the feeling that the land remembers those who once lived and worked here. The forest canopy affects sound and light, producing patterns that distort perception. Footsteps echo with unexpected resonance, leaves rustle without discernible cause, and distant branches shift, creating shadows that appear to move independently. The interplay of visual, auditory, and tactile cues produces an environment that is immersive and subtly alive. Observers report moments when ordinary movement is exaggerated, producing the impression of figures passing just beyond view or lingering at the periphery of vision. The interplay of visual, auditory, and tactile cues produces an environment that is immersive and subtly alive. Abandoned farmhouses contribute to the eerie quality of the road. Doors sag, windows are broken or boarded, and faded paint reflects the waning light in uneven patterns. Observers occasionally glimpse fleeting shapes inside rooms or along porches. Shadows appear to move in ways that suggest life without confirming it, reinforcing the sense that the past continues to inhabit these spaces. The combination of architecture, decay, and movement creates a layered perception of memory intertwined with the present. Time feels altered on Red Hill Road at night. Shadows linger longer than expected, figures reappear in familiar locations, and whispers repeat in irregular patterns. Moments stretch and compress unpredictably, producing the sensation that travelers are moving through both present and past simultaneously. The rhythm of the forest, stone walls, and abandoned structures contributes to an environment where perception is heightened, and every detail carries significance. Even the open stretches between forests and fields carry unusual energy. Shadows bend across road and ground. Distant lights appear briefly among trees. And the movement of the wind amplifies every sound. Observers report that these elements interact with perception, creating a sense of environment that is attentive and responsive. The road itself seems to hold memory, capturing footsteps, voices, and presence in subtle, lingering ways. Visitors often leave Red Hill Road with lasting impressions of atmosphere and awareness. The figures along stone walls, whispers of old names. Whispers of old names, cold spots moving unpredictably. And shadows along tree lanes combine to create an experience that is immersive, contemplative, and haunting. The road does not pursue or threaten, it simply retains the presence of past travelers and observers, preserving memory in the landscape and leaving a quiet impression that endures long after departure. Red Hill Road endures as a place where environment, history, and perception converge. Forested trails, abandoned farmhouses, spectral figures, whispering voices, subtle chills, and the memory and presence embedded in the road. A testament to the enduring spirit of the land and the lives that once traversed its winding path. Black Hollow Pike stretches through remote forests and rolling hills, a road lined with dense trees that block sunlight and cast long shadows across the pavement. By day, the road is quiet, winding along valleys and over small streams, with occasional glimpses of abandoned structures and empty bridges. Yet as evening falls and darkness spreads, the environment shifts, revealing subtle movements and presences that are otherwise unnoticed, a layered memory embedded in the landscape. Figures are sometimes seen along bridges and embankments, standing motionless or moving slowly along the roadside. Observers describe a sense of awareness from these forms, as though the road itself preserves memory and attention from those who once walked its stretches. Approaching the figures often causes them to vanish entirely, leaving only the impression of motion and presence. Voices drift from the trees, carried on the wind. Faint, indistinct words, names, and murmurs echo across the road, weaving with the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of nocturnal insects. Travelers report feeling drawn to listen, sensing narratives embedded in the environment. The voices are fleeting yet persistent, appearing from different directions, amplifying the impression that the forest is alive with memory and attention, and that every step along the road is observed. Lights sometimes appear where no one stands, glowing faintly along curves, between trees, or above the surface of small streams. The illumination shifts subtly, flickering or moving as though carried by unseen hands. Observers report that the lights appear and vanish unpredictably, heightening the sense of presence and encouraging careful observation. The glow often highlights shadows and shapes, revealing forms that suggest movement or attention, and reinforcing the sense that the road holds a consciousness of its own. Shadows interact with the environment in unsettling ways. Branches, rocks, and road surfaces create shifting patterns. Figures sometimes emerge within these shadows, gliding along embankments or pausing near bridges before disappearing. Observers describe a rhythm to these movements, deliberate and fluid, as though the road itself preserves gestures and actions from the past. Footsteps echo along the pavement and through the trees. Sometimes they seem to follow travelers, other times they originate from spaces that are inaccessible or invisible. The sound blends with ambient noises of the wind, leaves, distant animals, creating a layered auditory landscape. Observing subtle differences in echo, pace, and origin that reinforce the impression of presence within the environment. Reinforce the impression of presence within the environment. The bridges along Black Hollow Pike carry a particular resonance. Figures are often glimpsed near railings, standing silently or gliding across spans before vanishing. The sound of water below or the hollow echo of footsteps on wooden planks amplifies perception, giving every movement and shadow greater presence. Observers report that these areas feel charged with memory, as though the road and its structures preserve echoes of lives and events long past. The trees and surrounding forest further enhance the atmosphere, reaching out from darkness or disappearing into underbrush. Like an invisible brush of air or a fleeting pressure, which heightens awareness and engagement with the environment. In a world where the unseen lurks around every corner, time feels altered along Black Hollow Pike. Moments stretch and compress, shadows shift irregularly. Figures appear and vanish, and voices or footsteps travel unpredictably. Observers describe heightened perception of distance, movement, and detail. The road as a space where memory and presence layer over one another. Each observation contributes to the sense that the environment is alive with awareness, preserving traces of action, attention, and passage. Departing Black Hollow Pike leaves a lasting impression. Figures fade into darkness, footsteps and whispers recede, and ghostly lights vanish. Yet memory preserves the sense of presence. Travelers carry the layered awareness of shadow, sound, and subtle motion. With them, recognizing that the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, a testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. The road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, a testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, a testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, a testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, a testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection, A testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection. A testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. The bridges, curves, trees, and stretches of pavement remain vivid in recollection. A testament to the enduring presence embedded in the landscape. That the road continues to hold attention, observation, and memory long after they have left. Ultimately, Black Hollow Pike is more than a road through forest and hills. It is an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Figures along bridges, shadows among trees, ghostly lights, footsteps, and whispers create a layered and immersive experience. Each journey becomes an exploration of attention and awareness, leaving a lasting impression of a road that continues to observe, remember, and endure, preserving the echoes of travelers and events long after they have passed through its isolated stretches. Lantern Hollow Road stretches through thick woods and low hills, a narrow ribbon of asphalt that disappears into darkness as night falls. Even when the streetlights are working, their glow is weak, casting dim pools of light that do little to penetrate the surrounding shadows. Trees line the shoulders, their branches reaching overhead like skeletal fingers, bending and swaying in the wind. The road curves and dips, hiding the horizon and amplifying the sense of isolation. At night, the environment transforms. Shadows lengthen and twist across asphalt, fog gathers in hollows, and every movement feels heightened, every sound magnified. Figures are occasionally glimpsed pacing alongside the road, holding lanterns that cast small, flickering circles of light across the ground. They appear suddenly at the edge of vision, motionless or moving slowly, and vanish when approached. Their presence is brief but unforgettable, the glow of their lanterns illuminating glimpses of features or clothing that seem out of place in time. Observers describe a sense of continuity, as if these figures are connected to the road itself, carrying with them echoes of memory that linger in the air and along the pavement. Visitors report whispers drifting through the trees and along the asphalt. They are soft and indistinct, sometimes calling names, sometimes repeating fragments of speech. The whispers seem to move independently of the observer, shifting with the wind and the curves of the road. At times, they appear to come from behind, to the side, or ahead, making it impossible to locate the source. The effect is disorienting yet compelling, encouraging travelers to heighten awareness, to move slowly and carefully, and to pay attention to the subtle interplay of sound, space, and perception. Footsteps echo along the road despite the absence of anyone walking. They rise and fall unpredictably, sometimes close enough to suggest someone is just behind, sometimes distant and fading into the fog. The echoes blend with the natural sounds of the forest, wind, and distant wildlife, creating an immersive auditory landscape where every movement carries significance. Faces sometimes appear in the fog, peering from shadows along the edge of the road. They are fleeting, half-formed, and impossible to approach, lingering only for a moment before dissolving into mist. The fog itself seems to participate, shaping perception, bending light, and obscuring distance, creating a shifting landscape that is both physical and psychological. The trees along Lantern Hollow Road form corridors of shadow and light. Moonlight or faint streetlight filters through branches, creating patterns that shift with every movement of wind or vehicle. Shadows bend and twist along trunks and leaves, sometimes suggesting motion where there is none. Each step taken along the road is framed by these shifting patterns, drawing attention to subtle detail and encouraging careful observation. The environment becomes an active participant, guiding perception and inviting engagement with space, shadow, and light. Encouraging careful observation. Temperature and air movement accentuate the experience. These subtle environmental cues blend with visual and auditory phenomena to form a complete sensory experience, where perception and memory are engaged fully and continuously. The curves and dips of the road enhance both sight and sensation. Sudden bends hide distant portions of asphalt, while rises and hollows create unexpected views of forest, fog, and shadow. Each section introduces new opportunities for observation, perception, and reflection. The road itself feels alive, responding to motion and attention, inviting careful navigation and awareness of every detail. From the texture of asphalt to the flicker of a lantern or the faint movement of shadow. Time feels altered along Lantern Hollow Road. Minutes stretch when observing the interplay of light, shadow, and sound, while hours may pass unnoticed in the immersive environment. The rhythm of wind, footsteps, whispers, and flickering lanterns creates a continuous flow, merging perception with experience. Travelers become participants in the landscape, attuned to every change in sensation, sound, or motion, and fully immersed in the atmosphere of the road. Memory of Lantern Hollow Road persists long after leaving. Figures pacing with lanterns. Echoes of footsteps. Whispers in the fog. And faces in mist remain vivid in recollection. Observers carry these experiences forward, integrating them into perception of other environments and landscapes. The road leaves an enduring impression. A space where shadow, sound, light, and subtle presence converge, creating an experience that is both haunting and captivating. A journey where mystery and atmosphere linger in every curve and hollow. Lantern Hollow Road endures as both physical path and living landscape of presence. Its asphalt, tree leans, fog, and shifting shadows interact with light, sound, and perception. Figures, whispers, and faint lights converge to engage attention, reflection, and imagination. Travelers encounter a road alive with memory, energy, and subtle presence, leaving a lasting impression of mystery, awareness, and the quiet persistence of the unseen. Wittawa South Creek Road winds through dense woods and narrow hollows, its surface cracked and overgrown in places, a path that seems to exist both in the present and in memory. The surrounding trees tower overhead, their limbs intertwining to form shadows that shift with every breeze. The air carries the scent of damp earth, fallen leaves, and the faint tang of decaying wood. Even in daylight, there is a sense of quiet and isolation, yet it is at night when the Roada's reputation becomes tangible, and the haunting presence is most keenly felt. Figures of a woman in mourning are said to appear along the roadside. She is glimpsed standing beneath trees or walking slowly along the edges of the road, her form delicate yet unmistakable against the darkness. Observers describe her movements as deliberate, yet ephemeral, appearing and vanishing as if woven from the shadows themselves. Approaching her often yields nothing tangible, but the sense of presence remains, lingering in the mind and heightening awareness of the surroundings. Faint sobbing rises from the underbrush. The sound drifts softly along the road, ebbing and flowing with the movement of the wind. The sound carries an intimate sorrow, echoing faintly across hollows and among trees. The sobbing seems to have no origin, appearing to emanate from spaces where nothing is visible. Yet its emotional weight is undeniable. Rustling accompanies the sobbing, subtle but distinct, as if leaves and branches are disturbed by unseen footsteps. These sounds sometimes precede the appearance of figures or follow them, producing the impression that movement and presence are intertwined with the natural environment. Observers describe a heightened sensitivity to every sound, every shift of air, and every swaying shadow, making even ordinary actions like stepping on gravel or brushing past foliage feel significant. Shadows along Wittawa South Creek Road often move independently of the trees and ambient light. The shadows stretch along trunks and across the road, forming shapes that appear to glide or linger for moments before dissolving. Observers report glimpses of these shadows at the periphery of vision, appearing to watch, follow, or respond to movement. The interplay of light, darkness, and shadow produces an immersive atmosphere, one in which ordinary perception is heightened and the environment feels alive with memory and awareness. The wind carries voices along the road, faint and fragmented. Sometimes they repeat old warnings, phrases of caution or concern, rising and fading unpredictably. The sounds mingle with the rustle of leaves, the distant movement of branches, and the ambient noises of the night. Observers describe a subtle pull in attention, as though the voices guide the eyes toward hidden spaces or darkened hollows. Even minor movements along the road become amplified in significance, with every step producing awareness of surrounding forms and sounds. The landscape itself contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Narrow hollows and rises create pockets of shadow and silence. Tree roots and fallen limbs form natural obstacles that force careful movement, increasing sensitivity to sound and light. Moonlight glances off leaves and bark, producing fleeting patterns that suggest movement or figures. Observers report that these shifts in light and shadow enhance the sense of presence, making even static forms seem alive and responsive. Extended presence along the road amplifies the experience. Figures appear more frequently along the roadside. Sobbing seems closer. Shadows gather in corners and hollows. The voices carried by the wind become more distinct. Every glance, step, and sound is heightened. The land seems to interact with visitors, guiding attention and reinforcing the sense that the road itself preserves memory and presence. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions. The cries from the underbrush, the independent shadows, and the wind-carried voices. The shapes of trees, the patterns of shadow, and the subtle movement of figures and light. Long after leaving, Wittawa South Creek Road exists as a space where the past continues to inhabit the present, reinforcing the perception that the visit leaves a lasting impression. Wittawa South Creek Road endures as a place where history, memory, and subtle energy converge. Its roadside, forested hollows, and shadows carry echoes of lives and experiences long past. While figures, sobbing, rustling, and voices persist in the present. To walk its path is to enter a realm where ordinary perception is heightened, where the road remembers, and where unseen presences observe, guide, and endure. Every step along Wittawa South Creek Road becomes an encounter with memory, awareness, and the lingering presence of those who continue to inhabit its shadows. Devil's Hollow Road winds through thick forests and steep hills, its asphalt curling along cliffs and narrow valleys. By day, the road is lined with trees whose branches reach across the lanes, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. Birds call in the canopy, and the rustle of leaves carries faintly on the wind. After sunset, the forest swallows the edges of the road, and the twists and turns take on an ominous character. Darkness settles quickly, and the road feels like a corridor between worlds, each bend revealing shadows that seem to move with deliberate purpose. Figures are sometimes glimpsed along the guardrails, their forms faint but distinctly human. They stand motionless for moments, then shift slightly, as if observing the road and the travelers moving along it. When approached, the figures vanish suddenly, leaving empty guardrails and the quiet rustle of leaves. Observers describe the encounters as brief yet vivid, leaving a lasting impression that presence lingers even when nothing is seen. The road itself seems aware, responding subtly to attention and movement in ways that are difficult to explain. Cold drafts sweep across the asphalt unpredictably. They brush over shoulders and arms, sending a shiver through the spine, concentrated in isolated patches along the curves. Travelers describe the sensation as moving with them, sometimes following along the guardrails or sweeping across open sections of road. The chill heightens awareness, sharpening perception of every shadow, flicker of light, and subtle sound along the forested corridor. Each step becomes deliberate, and every glance carries weight. Ghostly whispers are carried on the wind, faint and irregular, drifting from trees and hidden recesses. The words are unintelligible yet unmistakable, weaving across bends and into valleys. Observers report that the whispers seem to respond to movement, rising and falling as if following travelers along the road. Combined with the figures at guardrails and the sudden cold, the voices create an immersive atmosphere, a sense that the hollow is alive with memory and unseen observation. Shadows along Davila South Hollow Road twist and stretch unnaturally. Moonlight and headlights cast shifting shapes across asphalt, guardrails, and forest edges. Shadows appear to move independently, stretching into gaps between trees or curling across the road where no one is present. Observers describe the effect as disorienting, a subtle distortion of perception that makes familiar curves and bends feel unpredictable. The interplay of light, shadow, and motion reinforces the sense that the road itself is more than inert asphalt and forest, that it holds presence and memory. Figures move silently along the curves, appearing and disappearing with little warning. Observers note deliberate pacing, pauses, and subtle shifts in posture that suggest awareness. The forms glide along embankments or across sections of road where visibility is low, vanishing when looked at directly. Footsteps echo across asphalt and through leaves in moments where no living traveler is present. The combination of movement, sound, and shadow creates an environment where ordinary perception is heightened and every detail is noticed. Time along Devil's Hollow Road seems altered. Moments stretch and contract, shadows linger, and the road curves and bends in ways that feel slightly distorted in perception. Figures appear and vanish, whispers rise and fade, and cold drafts move along travelers unpredictably. Every bend becomes a point of heightened awareness, each section of asphalt a stage for subtle interaction between environment and observer. Travelers describe a sense that the road records and responds to their presence in ways that are immersive and lasting. Even brief encounters leave enduring impressions. Figures along guardrails, whispers drifting across bends. Cold drafts, and twisting shadows imprint themselves on memory. Observers recount a persistent awareness of presence. The subtle tension of unseen observation. And the sensation that the road itself carries memory. Leaving travelers with a quiet sense of the hollow's character. Long after departure. The hollow's character. Long after departure. The terrain of Davila South Hollow Road amplifies these experiences. Dense forests line both sides, forming walls of shadow. Slopes and embankments create vantage points for figures to appear and vanish. The wind carries sound across bends and between trees, amplifying whispers, rustling leaves, and distant echoes. Light from the moon or vehicle headlights catches rocks, guardrails, and tree trunks in ways that create shifting patterns, blending perception with environment to produce moments of unease and subtle observation. The road exists as a space where memory, perception, and environment converge. Figures glide along guardrails and embankments, shadows twist and curl. Cold drafts sweep along asphalt, and whispers echo unpredictably. The road does not threaten, yet its presence is undeniable, creating immersive awareness and layered experience for those who traverse it. Observers become attuned to light, shadow, sound, and movement, each contributing to the perception that the road is alive with history and presence. At night, Devil's Hollow Road is most alive. Figures appear along curves and guardrails, shadows twist across asphalt and forest edges. Whispers rise and fade, and cold sweeps across travelers. Headlights flicker and reflect off embankments. Subtle movement of leaves and branches adds to the sense of presence. And every bend feels heightened with observation. Travelers leave with lasting impressions. A quiet awareness of unseen watchers. And the enduring sensation that the road holds memory. Perception, and presence within every curve, shadow, and echo along its winding path. Lick Creek Road winds through dense forests, a narrow, isolated path flanked by towering trees and undergrowth that swallows light as the day fades. By daylight, the road is calm, sunlight filtering through branches and painting patterns on asphalt and dirt. Yet as night approaches, the landscape transforms. Shadows deepen along the forest edges, and a quiet weight settles over the roadway, making every step and sound feel heightened and significant. Figures are sometimes seen walking along the edges of the forest. Their forms are indistinct, silhouetted against the dim light or the dense shadows of trees. They vanish when approached directly, leaving only memory and perception to confirm their presence. Visitors report hearing distant screams or faint voices calling their names. The sounds carry unpredictably across the road, bouncing off trees and undergrowth, often seeming to originate from multiple directions. Names are whispered in tones that are urgent yet soft, echoing briefly before fading into the night. The auditory experience creates a continuous awareness, drawing attention to every rustle of leaves, snap of a branch, and subtle movement in the shadows. Headlights flicker along the road even when skies are clear. Observers describe sudden changes in illumination that cast shadows in unexpected directions, revealing and concealing features of the environment simultaneously. The effect is disorienting, producing a heightened sense of awareness and anticipation. Each flash or dimming of light seems intentional, as though the road itself is interacting with the traveler, enhancing the perception of presence beyond the visible. Shadows move unnaturally along the roadside and tree-line. They stretch, twist, and sometimes step into the roadway before disappearing entirely. Observers note that these forms do not obey ordinary light or wind, appearing at the periphery of vision and vanishing when attention is focused directly on them. The shifting shadows create a layered experience, blending natural and unexplained phenomena into an immersive environment that engages both sight and perception. The forest amplifies every sound. Footsteps echo differently depending on location, leaves rustle with subtle irregularity, and branches shift without clear cause. The road and surrounding woods produce a complex acoustic landscape, where faint voices, rustling, and distant movement blend together. Travelers report that each noise, however slight, seems charged with significance, producing an awareness that extends beyond ordinary observation. The edges of the road offer unexpected vantage points. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. Attentive to every step along the pavement. Every step along the pavement. The pavement. Disappearing back into darkness. Before disappearing back into darkness. The shadows appear to move along paths that were empty moments before. Figures sometimes seem to traverse the road itself, pausing at intervals before disappearing back into darkness. The interplay of height, distance, and light enhances the sense that the environment is alive with subtle movement, attentive to every step along the pavement. The edges of the road. Time feels altered along Lick Creek Road at night. Moments stretch, shadows linger, and figures reappear in similar locations after vanishing. Auditory phenomena, including whispers and distant calls, repeat in irregular patterns, creating a sensation that the past and present coexist. Travelers describe an immersive awareness where perception is sharpened, and the smallest details take on significance within the larger landscape. Even in stretches of open road, the atmosphere remains charged. Flickering headlights, shifting shadows, and distant sounds create a continuous sense of movement and presence. Observers report subtle sensations of being followed or observed, a quiet attention that seems to extend for miles. The road itself feels alive, retaining memory and interacting with every traveler in ways that are subtle, persistent, and unforgettable. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile cues produces a multisensory experience. Figures along the forest edge, whispers calling names, flickering light, and unnatural shadows merge to create an environment that is immersive and compelling. Every step along the road feels layered with history, presence, and perception. Blending the ordinary and the extraordinary in a way that engages the observer fully. Visitors leave Lick Creek Road with lasting impressions. The figures, voices, shifting shadows, and flickering lights linger in memory, producing a continuous sense of awareness. Long after departure. The road is not threatening, yet it carries an undeniable presence. A subtle interaction that connects travelers to the environment. And the layered history embedded in forest, road, and shadow. Lick Creek Road endures as a place where landscape, perception, and memory converge. Forested edges, deserted stretches, spectral figures, whispers, and shadows combine to produce an atmosphere that is immersive, mysterious, and unforgettable. Visitors experience not only the physical path but also the persistent presence that inhabits it. A testament to the enduring spirit of the road and the unseen watchers that remain long after night falls. Old Mill Road winds through a quiet countryside, its pavement flanked by overgrown fields, crumbling stone walls, and the skeletal remains of mills and houses long abandoned. The structures stand as silent witnesses to the passage of time, their roofs sagging, windows shattered, and wooden beams weathered to gray. By day, sunlight illuminates the decay, revealing the intricate textures of brick, wood, and metal. Yet as evening falls, the road transforms, and the abandoned buildings take on a presence that is both subtle and undeniable. Figures are sometimes glimpsed in windows or along pathways, their forms faint against the shadows of dilapidated walls. They move slowly, pausing to look outward or gliding silently along corridors, vanishing when approached. Observers describe a sensation of awareness, as though the environment itself preserves memory and attention from those who once inhabited these spaces. The figures are not threatening but evoke a quiet tension, a sense of being observed across time and distance. Doors slam without wind, startling in the stillness, and machinery creaks as if powered by invisible hands. Rusted gears, pulleys, and wheels emit faint groans, echoing along the empty halls of the mills. Observers report that these sounds carry across distances, resonating from one building to another, producing a layered auditory environment. Each noise reinforces the sense that the structures are alive with memory, preserving echoes of the past in wood, metal, and stone. Each noise reinforces the sense that the structures are alive with memory, preserving echoes of the past in wood, metal, and stone. Spectral lights sometimes hover near the old buildings, faint glows that drift along pathways or hover above the ground. They illuminate small details of the abandoned structure, doorframes, broken windows, and rusting tulsa, casting long shadows that shift with every flicker. Observers describe the lights as guiding attention, highlighting shapes and movement that are otherwise difficult to perceive. They appear and vanish unpredictably, adding a dynamic quality to the landscape that blurs the line between natural phenomena and something more elusive. The pathways between mills and houses amplify perception. Shadows bend along fences and stretch across broken floors. The effect is heightened by low light, fog, or evening mist, which diffuses shapes and sound, making motion subtle yet undeniable. Observers find themselves attuned to every nuance of movement, shadow, and sound, aware of the layering of memory within the abandoned landscape. Footsteps echo across pavement, gravel, and wooden floors. They appear to follow observers, sometimes preceding them or originating from empty buildings. The sound blends with natural noise, the rustle of leaves, distant birds, and wind through broken structure, producing a rich auditory landscape. Each echo is distinct, a rhythm that draws attention to the environment while reinforcing the presence of memory embedded within the mills and houses. Windows, doors, and archways capture and amplify shadow and light. Figures are often glimpsed in these openings, partially concealed, fading when approached. The interplay of natural light, moonlight, and spectral illumination enhances the perception of movement and presence. Observers often notice subtle gestures, a slight shift in posture or a pause in motion, reinforcing the impression that the road and structures are aware of those who traverse them. The surrounding landscape contributes to the atmosphere. Figures sometimes move between trees or along fence lines, their presence only partially visible. The combination of architecture and landscape produces an immersive environment where perception, memory, and attention converge. Observers become acutely aware of space, distance, and the subtle interplay of light, shadow, and sound. Time feels altered along Old Mill Road. Moments stretch or compress as figures appear and vanish. Doors slam without wind, and lights flicker unpredictably. Shadows shift and sounds echo irregularly, producing a sense of suspension. Visitors report a heightened awareness, perceiving movement, sound, and subtle shifts that would go unnoticed in ordinary settings. Each step, glance, and observation contributes to the immersive experience, connecting present perception to the echoes of past life. Departing Old Mill Road leaves a lasting impression. Figures fade into shadow, doors and machinery fall silent. And spectral lights vanish, yet memory preserves the experience of presence. Observers carry awareness of movement, sound, and shadow, recognizing that the road and abandoned structures continue to observe and remember. Every mill, house, and pathway remains vivid in recollection, a reminder that memory and presence endure in spaces long after their occupants have gone. Ultimately, Old Mill Road is more than a path. A path through abandoned buildings and overgrown fields. It is an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Figures in windows and along pathways, doors and machinery moving without cause, and spectral lights create a layered, immersive experience. Each journey becomes an exploration of attention, awareness, and history, leaving a vivid impression of a road and its structures that continue to watch, remember, and endure, preserving the echoes of past lives along its isolated stretches. Preserving the echoes of past lives along its isolated stretches. Red River Road stretches through open plains and sparse woodland, a narrow ribbon of asphalt that disappears into darkness as night falls. By day, the landscape is expansive, sunlight illuminating dry grasses, riverbanks, and distant ridges. Birds call from scattered trees, and the wind moves in long, rolling gusts, carrying the scent of earth and water. Yet when darkness settles, the road transforms. Shadows stretch across the asphalt, fog drifts along the river, and the environment takes on an eerie presence, subtle yet persistent, as though the past lingers in every curve and hollow. Figures are sometimes glimpsed along the riverbanks. They appear at the edge of vision, half-formed and still, framed by moonlight or the faint glow of headlights. Approaching them often reveals nothing, leaving only the sensation that they have always been there, quietly observing the road and those who travel it. These forms vanish into the fog, dissolving as if they are part of the mist itself. Their presence is fleeting but unmistakable, creating a link between past and present, and lending a sense that the landscape carries memory in every stone, ripple, and shadow. Visitors report hearing footsteps echoing behind them despite the absence of anyone walking. The sound rises and falls, sometimes matching the rhythm of their own steps, at other times moving independently, creating the impression of a companion or follower that is never seen. Footfalls reverberate along the asphalt, amplifying each movement and drawing attention to subtle sounds within the environment. The echoes blend seamlessly with natural noises of wind and water, creating an immersive auditory landscape that heightens awareness and fosters a sense of tension and anticipation. Cold spots sweep across cars and bodies along the road. A sudden chill brushes the skin, lingering briefly before dissipating into the night air. The sensation is unpredictable, localized, and often coincides with glimpses of figures or the faintest sounds of movement. Observers describe the effect as a tangible presence, a sensation of energy in the air that cannot be explained by wind or temperature alone. These tactile cues amplify perception, connecting visitors more closely with the landscape and the subtle layers of memory embedded within it. Fog and mist play a significant role in shaping the experience. Light from headlights, moon, or distant stars is diffused, producing halos and reflections that shift with every breath of wind. Movement within the fog appears fluid, sometimes human, sometimes indistinct, blending perception with imagination. The interplay of fog, shadow, and light transforms familiar terrain into a dynamic, immersive environment. The riverbanks themselves contribute to the atmosphere. Water reflects pale moonlight, casting moving patterns across sand and stone. Waves lap quietly against shorelines, carrying sound through the night air. Figures are often observed along these edges, standing still or moving slowly, merging with reflections and mist. The river seems to amplify subtle cues, from shifting shadows to soft echoes, creating an environment where presence and landscape are inseparable. Presence and landscape are inseparable. Time feels altered along Red River Road. Minutes expand as travelers observe shadows, listen for footsteps, or notice movement within fog and river reflections. Hours can pass unnoticed in the immersive environment, as attention becomes focused on light, sound, and subtle sensations. The rhythm of wind, water, and ambient noise merges with perception, forming a continuous experience where the landscape is both observed and participatory. And every step taken becomes an interaction with the environment. The tree-lined and open fields along the road create corridors of perception. Branches stretch overhead, bending shadows across the asphalt, while open stretches expose travelers to vast, empty spaces. Each bend and crest offers new vantage points, new pockets of shadow, and new opportunities for the imagination to engage. Light and dark merge, and every glance along the riverbank or into the fog carries potential for unexpected observation. The road itself seems alive with history, memory, and subtle energy that interacts with all who traverse it. Whispers drift along the road, faint and intermittent, echoing through trees and across open fields. Sometimes they seem to come from behind, at other times from the side or the river itself. Names are called softly, fragments of speech or laughter carried in the night air. Fragments of speech or laughter carried in the night air. The auditory presence is ephemeral yet compelling, layering with visual and tactile sensations to create a cohesive, immersive experience. Every whisper, footstep, and shifting shadow reinforces the impression that Red River Road holds memory and presence within its landscape. That Red River Road holds memory and presence within its landscape. Memory of the road persists long after leaving. Figures glimpsed along riverbanks. Footsteps echoing in empty stretches. Cold spots brushing skin. And whispers carried on wind and fog. Remains vivid in recollection. Observers carry forward impressions of motion and sound. Fog and perception converge, creating a space both haunting and beautiful, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. A place where shadow, creating a space both haunting, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. A place where shadow, sound, creating a space both haunting and beautiful, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. A place where shadow, sound, fog, and perception converge, creating a space both haunting and beautiful, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. A place where shadow, sound, fog, and perception converge, creating a space both haunting and beautiful, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. Reflection, and whisper. A place where shadow, sound, fog, and perception converge, creating a space both haunting and beautiful, where the past lingers in every curve, reflection, and whisper. Reflection, and whisper. Red River Road endures as both physical path and living landscape of memory. Its asphalt, riverbanks, trees, and fog interact with light, shadow, sound, and perception to create a fully immersive environment. Figures, whispers, and unexplained motion converge to shape awareness, reflection, and observation. Travelers encounter a road alive with memory, energy, and subtle presence, leaving a lasting impression of mystery, attention, and the quiet persistence of the unseen along this secluded and enigmatic stretch of deserted landscape. Ghost Hollow Road winds through dense woods and overgrown fields, a narrow path where time seems suspended. The trees arch overhead, their limbs twisting into dark silhouettes that stretch across the roadway. Abandoned houses sit at intervals along the edges of the road, their wood weathered and cracked. Their windows darkened and hollow. Even in daylight, there is a sense of isolation, but as dusk falls, shadows lengthen. And the atmosphere grows heavy with anticipation, as though the road itself holds memory and presence. Figures are sometimes glimpsed among the trees and near the abandoned houses. They move silently, blending with shadows and fading when approached. Their forms are often human in outline, yet indistinct, appearing fleetingly at the periphery of vision. Observers describe a sensation of being watched, an awareness that presence exists just beyond perception. These figures seem tied to the landscape, as if the trees and ruins themselves carry the memory of lives long past, replaying faint traces of motion and attention. Visitors report hearing soft cries and laughter that seem to come from nowhere. The sounds drift along the road, rising and falling unpredictably, echoing off trees and the walls of abandoned structures. They are faint, yet unmistakable, carrying a sense of sorrow, mischief, or warning. The noises are layered with natural sounds of the rustle of leaves, the creak of wood, the distant call of animalsa. Blending into an immersive environment where ordinary perception is altered and every sound is amplified in significance. Shadows along Ghost Hollow Road often appear to move independently of light and object. Observers describe fleeting shapes at the edges of vision, figures that stretch, fold, or dissipate, creating the impression of forms existing just outside physical reality. The play of light and shadow produces an atmosphere in which every glance, every step, and every movement feels amplified, producing a constant awareness of unseen presence. The abandoned houses contribute to the haunting environment. Doors hang slightly ajar, creaking without wind. Windows reflect faint glimmers that suggest movement, though no source is found. Inside, dust drifts in thin shafts of light, and corners of rooms are swallowed in shadow. Observers report seeing faint shapes standing near walls or crossing hallways, disappearing when focused upon. The interaction of structure, light, and perception makes the houses feel like extensions of the landscape, imbued with memory and attentive presence. The forest around the road is alive with subtle movement. Leaves rustle in irregular patterns, branches sway without wind, and small animals stir, their noises amplified in the stillness. Every sound becomes meaningful, every shift in light or shadow carries significance. Observers describe feeling guided or accompanied by forces unseen, a quiet awareness that mirrors movement along the path. The dense canopy funnels sound and light in ways that distort distance and perception, heightening the sense that the environment itself is aware of presence. At night, the interplay of moonlight, shadow, and mist further enhances the atmosphere. Silver light glances off tree trunks and abandoned walls, producing elongated shadows that twist and merge. Mist clings to low-lying areas, drifting unpredictably across the road and through the underbrush. Figures appear within the fog or along the edges of light, moving silently, their forms ephemeral. The combination of mist, shadow, and reflected light produces an environment where ordinary perception is suspended and every shape, sound, and movement feels imbued with intent. Footsteps are often reported where no one walks. The sounds sometimes follow visitors, sometimes precede them, creating a subtle rhythm that mirrors attention and heightens sensory awareness. Every movement along the road feels accompanied, producing a layered perception in which ordinary distance and space are altered, and the observer becomes acutely aware of both the physical and subtle environment. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions. Figures in trees and ruins. Cries and laughter from unseen sources. Shifting shadows. And misty shapes. Linger in memory. Observers recall the outlines of abandoned houses. The motion of shadow across the road. And the layered sounds of night. Long after leaving. Reinforcing the sense that Ghost Hollow Road. Continuing to interact with those who enter. 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 Ghost Hollow Road endures as a place where history, memory, and subtle presence coexist. Its roadway, forest, and abandoned structures carry echoes of lives long past. While figures, whispers, footsteps, and shadows persist in the present. To walk its path is to enter a realm where ordinary perception is suspended. Where every step and glance is observed. And where the road itself remembers, watches, and endures through time. Every visitor leaves conscious of forces that are unseen, yet undeniably present along the winding, shadowed path of Ghost Hollow Road. Pine Ridge Road winds through dense pine forests and steep hills, the asphalt twisting along curves that drop sharply into shadowed valleys. By day, sunlight filters through tall trees, illuminating the needles and casting shifting patterns across the road. Birds call from the canopy, and the scent of pine fills the air. By night, the road transforms. Darkness settles quickly between the trees, and the curves feel narrower, the shadows deeper. Travelers often describe a sensation that the forest itself is watching, that every turn hides something unseen. Figures are sometimes glimpsed along the tree line. Observers describe them as human in shape yet ethereal. Appearing briefly among the trunks before dissolving into darkness. They pace silently, moving deliberately along hidden paths. Or lingering at the edge of vision. Approaching these forms often causes them to vanish entirely. Leaving only empty forest and the quiet rustle of pine needles under unseen movement. The presence is subtle but persistent. Creating a heightened awareness of the road and its surroundings. Whispers drift across the asphalt and through the trees, low and irregular. Travelers report hearing their names called softly, carried on the wind and echoing from distant ridges or hollows. The voices are faint yet distinct, blending with the natural sounds of the forest in a way that is difficult to ignore. Each whisper seems to linger just long enough to draw attention, emphasizing the presence of unseen watchers along the road. Each whisper seems to linger just long enough to draw attention, emphasizing the presence of unseen watchers along the road. Footsteps are often heard along empty stretches of asphalt. They echo in the curves and dips of the road, sometimes in rhythm with a traveller's own steps, other times independent, rising and fading unpredictably. Observers describe the sound as distinct, yet impossible to locate, adding to the sense of movement and life in the surrounding forest. Each echo increases the feeling that the road and its surroundings are alive with memory and awareness. Fog sometimes rolls in without explanation, blanketing the road and obscuring visibility entirely. The mist moves unpredictably, curling around trunks and rolling across asphalt, hiding curves and creating a shifting landscape. Observers report that the fog enhances every perception, making shadows more pronounced and sounds more distinct. Shapes appear and vanish within the white haze, blending movement and memory into the environment, making ordinary observation feel immersive and uncanny. The forest amplifies every sound and shadow. Branches sway and brush across one another, producing rustling that blends with whispers and footsteps. Hills and ridges create pockets of shadow that appear deeper than they should. While the curve of the road conceals and reveals movement unpredictably. Every detail of the terrain contributes to the perception of presence in the forest. Time along Pine Ridge Road seems altered after dark. Moments stretch longer than expected, echoes persist. And shadows linger along curves and embankments. And figures appear and vanish. Whispers rise and fall. And fog drifts across the asphalt in patterns that defy ordinary observation. Every bend and turn commands attention, making travelers acutely aware of every sound, movement, and shifting shadow. The experience creates an immersive awareness where past and present seem to coexist along the forested route. Even brief encounters leave lasting impressions. Figures glimpsed among trees. Whispers calling names. Footsteps on empty asphalt. And fog rolling in without explanation. Imprint themselves on memory. Travelers describe a persistent sense of observation. The quiet tension of being watched. And the feeling that the road itself preserves echoes of those who have traversed it before. Every glance into the shadows. And every pause at a curve. Reinforces the layered experience of perception and presence. Every glance into the shadows and every pause at a curve. Reinforces the feeling that the road itself preserves echoes of those who have traversed it before. Every glance into the shadows and every pause at a curve. Reinforces the layered experience of perception and presence. And the feeling that the road itself preserves echoes of those who have traversed it before. Every glance into the shadows and every pause at a curve. Reinforces the layered experience of perception and presence. And the feeling that the road itself preserves echoes of those who have traversed it before. Shadows along the edges of the road twist and bend in ways that seem almost unnatural. Moonlight filtering through the canopy catches the outlines of trunks and branches, producing fleeting shapes that resemble movement or human forms. Figures in the tree line appear just long enough to be noticed, then dissolve into darkness. The interplay of light, shadow, and ambient sound heightens awareness, creating the sensation that the forest itself participates in the observation of travelers. Pine Ridge Road exists as a space where environment, perception, and memory converge. Figures glide silently among the trees, whispers drift unpredictably across asphalt and slopes. Footsteps echo along empty curves. And fog rolls into obscure vision. The forest does not threaten, yet its presence is palpable. Creating an immersive experience that draws attention to every detail of the surroundings. Observers leave with a quiet awareness of unseen watchers. A sense of memory preserved in the trees, and the lingering impression of the road as a living, observing landscape. At night, Pine Ridge Road is most alive. Figures move among dense pines, shadows stretch and twist across curves, whispers call softly, footsteps echo. And fog curls along the asphalt. Every bend and slope amplifies sound, light, and shadow. Creating an environment where perception is heightened and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Travelers depart with lasting impressions. A quiet recognition of unseen presence. And the understanding that the road and forest hold stories. Observation and memory woven into every curve, shadow, and whispered sound along Pine Ridge Road. Black River Road winds through dense forests and marshlands, a remote path where asphalt meets fog-laden riverbanks. By day, sunlight filters through tall trees, and the distant water glimmers as it flows over rocks and fallen branches. Yet as night falls, the landscape transforms. Shadows deepen, fog rises from the river, and the stillness of the road creates an atmosphere that is heavy with presence. Travelers describe the silence as alive, a quiet tension that seems to watch every step along the winding path. Phantom lights occasionally appear along the remote stretches of the road. They glow faintly, hovering above the asphalt or among the trees, appearing distant yet perceptible. Observers report that the lights move independently, shifting closer or retreating without explanation. They vanish abruptly into darkness or river mist. Their presence is subtle but persistent, leaving a lingering impression that the road itself is alive with unseen watchers. Figures are sometimes glimpsed walking along the roadside. They emerge from the shadows or the mist rising from the river, moving deliberately before fading from sight. Observers describe their movement as calm and purposeful, their forms indistinct yet unmistakably human. These figures do not interact directly but leave a palpable sense of observation, as if the road is inhabited by the memory of travelers who once walked its course. Chains dragging and doors creaking can be heard in the night, sounds that have no visible source. The noise echoes across the asphalt and through the surrounding forest, creating a layered auditory experience. Faint cries rise from nowhere, carried on the wind and drifting across the river and trees. Each sound heightens awareness, reinforcing the impression that the environment is both alive and attentive to the presence of those who traverse it. Fog rolling in from the river adds to the unsettling atmosphere. Within the fog, shapes sometimes appear as shadows moving in ways that seem deliberate, figures pacing along the roadside or among trees before disappearing. Observers describe the sensation of being surrounded, enveloped by presence and movement that cannot be fully seen or explained. Headlights of vehicles may flicker unexpectedly even when skies are clear. The brief dimming or brightening casts shifting shadows across the road, illuminating and concealing features of the environment. Travelers report that shadows appear closer or move toward the car during these moments, reinforcing a sense of unseen attention. The interplay of light, shadow, and mist creates a layered perception where every movement and sound feels magnified and significant. The river itself contributes to the ambience. Its surface reflects moonlight and the faint glow of phantom lights, producing ripples and patterns that shift unexpectedly. Observers sometimes glimpse figures emerging briefly from the mist above the water or stepping along the banks before vanishing. The combination of fog, reflective surfaces, and distant movement produces a continuous sense of presence, an environment that engages both sight and intuition. Trees and overgrowth amplify the effects of movement and sound. Branches sway even in still air, creating shadows that stretch and twist along the road. Leaves rustle without wind, producing subtle auditory illusions that merge with distant cries or the dragging of unseen chains. Observers describe a heightened sense of perception, aware of every motion and echo within the environment, as though the road and forest are attentive to their presence. Time seems altered along Black River Road at night. Figures reappear in familiar positions after vanishing. Phantom lights shift unpredictably across distance. Sounds repeat or echo with irregular rhythm, creating a layered experience where perception is intensified, and memory overlaps with present observation. Travelers report a sense of immersion, feeling part of a space where past and present coexist. Even open stretches of the road carry a sense of life. Mist drifts across asphalt, shadows stretch along the roadside, and phantom lights appear in unexpected locations. Observers describe a sensation of being accompanied, of unseen travelers pacing or observing from the edges of vision. The environment is subtle yet continuous, creating awareness that every step is noted, every sound amplified, and every shadow charged with meaning. Visitors often leave Black River Road with lingering impressions. The phantom lights. Figures along the roadside. Cries. Dragging chains. And shifting shadows produce an immersive and haunting experience. The road is not threatening, yet it carries undeniable presence. An attentive memory embedded within its mist, asphalt, and forest. Travelers sense the history and lingering spirits that occupy the road, leaving impressions that endure long after departure. Black River Road remains a place where landscape, perception, and memory converge. Remote stretches, spectral figures, phantom lights, and shifting shadows create an atmosphere that is immersive, mysterious, and unforgettable. Visitors experience not only the physical road but also the attentive presence of unseen watchers, a testament to the enduring spirit and quiet observation embedded within this remote and haunted environment. Hollow Creek Pike winds through dense forest and rolling hills, a narrow road flanked by trees whose branches arch overhead, forming a shadowed canopy. The asphalt is worn, the edges crumbling in places, and fog often drifts low along the ground, curling around curves and weaving through the trees. By day, the pike seems quiet and isolated, a stretch of road to traverse with caution. Yet as darkness falls, the environment transforms, revealing movements and presences that defy ordinary perception, hinting at memory and attention embedded within the landscape. Figures are sometimes glimpsed at bends, in ditches, or along the edges of the forest. Approaching them causes them to vanish, leaving only the impression of motion and awareness. Observers describe a subtle tension, a sense that the road itself preserves traces of those who walked it long ago, silently observing travelers who now pass through. Whispers drift along the road, soft and indistinct, carrying names and phrases that seem to rise from the fog or from the spaces between trees. The voices are fleeting, fading and returning unpredictably, and often appear to follow travelers as they progress along the pike. Footsteps echo along the asphalt, sometimes synchronizing with the visitor's own movement, other times arising from empty stretches of road or unseen terrain. These auditory cues heighten awareness, compelling attention to every sound, shadow, and movement in the environment. Fog moves in unnatural patterns, rolling along bends, clinging to trees, and rising from ditches in slow, curling tendrils. Within the mist, faces and shadows appear briefly, illuminated by moonlight or reflected in wet patches of asphalt. Observers often report that once seen, these forms linger in perception, impossible to fully dismiss. The fog amplifies every sound, shadow, and subtle movement, creating an immersive environment where perception and memory intertwine. The curves of the pike are particularly active. Shadows stretch across the road, bending along guardrails and tree lines, creating shapes that suggest motion even when the path appears empty. Figures glide along the bends, pausing near tree trunks or ditches before vanishing. Observers describe a rhythm to these appearances, deliberate yet unpredictable, reinforcing the impression that the environment preserves attention and presence over time. Footsteps and subtle sounds interact with the natural ambience of the forest. Leaves rustle in the wind, branches sway overhead, and distant wildlife calls echo along the hills. Within this auditory tapestry, phantom steps and whispers blend seamlessly, creating a layered experience that challenges ordinary perception. Every movement along the road becomes deliberate, every glance intentional, as the landscape communicates through shadow, sound, and suggestion. Trees and forest edges amplify perception. Branches and foliage capture shadows, bend light, and create partial concealment for figures glimpsed between trunks. Faces and forms sometimes appear within these natural structures, lingering long enough to be recognized, then fading into darkness. Observers report a sense of rhythm and attention, a cadence that seems guided by memory rather than the ordinary flow of nature. Each step and pause heightens awareness, reinforcing the immersive quality of the environment. The immersive quality of the environment. Time feels altered along Hollow Creek Pike. Moments stretch and compress, fog shifts irregularly. Figures appear and vanish unpredictably, and whispers echo in patterns that defy expectation. Observers sense a suspension of ordinary temporal flow. Perceiving the landscape as both present and layered with the memory of past travelers. The interplay of light, shadow, sound, and sensation creates a fully immersive experience, compelling awareness and attention at every bend, ditch, and forest edge. Even brief pauses along the road become amplified. Observers notice movement at the corners of vision. Hear whispers that fade and return. And perceive subtle shifts in air or temperature. Each encounter reinforces the sense that the environment is alive with memory and attention. preserving traces of those who have passed through and interacting with those who now walk its length. Shadows, fog, and echoes maintain a continuous dialogue with perception, creating a space that is both natural and inhabited by lingering presence. Departing Hollow Creek Pike leaves a lasting impression. Figures fade into darkness, footsteps and whispers recede. And fog disperses across curves and ditches. Yet the awareness of presence endures, carried by memory and attention. Travelers report lingering images of faces, shadows, and subtle movements. A reminder that the road continues to observe and remember. Every bend, ditch, and forest edge remains vivid in recollection. Preserving the layered perception of movement, shadow, and memory along its isolated stretches. Ultimately, Hollow Creek Pike is more than asphalt and forest. It is an environment where perception, memory, and presence converge. Figures along bends, shadows among trees, ghostly footsteps, whispered names, and lingering fog create a layered and immersive experience. Each journey becomes an exploration of attention, awareness, and historical memory, leaving a vivid impression of a road that continues to observe, remember, and endure, preserving the echoes of travelers long after they have passed through its haunted curves and isolated stretches. Leaving a vivid impression of a road that continues to observe, remember, and endure, preserving the echoes of travelers long after they have passed through its haunted curves and isolated stretches. Thank you for traveling along the haunted roads of Kentucky with me tonight. These roads carry the echoes of tragedy, the whispers of the lost, and the restless spirits that wander silently after dark. Some travelers leave terrified, some haunted, and some never return. If you ever find yourself driving through Kentucky's backroads after sunset, remember these tales. Step carefully, listen closely, and ask yourself, would you dare venture where the past refuses to rest, or would you turn back before the shadows reach you? Rest well, my friend, until our next haunted journey.